Another episode of All the Bases. How are we doing, everybody? Good to be with you. Episode 4 of All in the Bases, All of the Bases, Dan Bartels podcast. And we got a very interesting week, Olympic week. And the Olympics are now over as we are recording this just moments after the United States national hockey team takes home the gold medal over the Canada team. And it was a great game. Jack Hughes, the overtime game winner, the New Jersey Devil, doing it for the local tri-state area. It's good to see. We have a lot of Olympic stories we're going to get into. That was the main one, of course, being the lead first base today on All of the Bases. Hope everybody's doing well. We got an action-packed show for you today. We got baseball on the docket. We got some Knicks. We got some, top 15 NBA players that we promised last episode we will bring you. It's been a little bit delayed on our end. It's nobody's fault. It's just kind of the way things have been moving. But now that Olympics officially slowing down, we will have time to bring it to you guys and cover a lot of it. We could have brought you episodes as the Olympics were going on, but these things happen so quickly. It's nice that tonight we will have the closing ceremonies out there in Milan, and it's nice that the U.S. brings home gold in both the women's hockey and the men's hockey, respectively. So shout out to the men. They have their first win over Canada since it's been a long time. The Miracle on Ice since 1980. When they won over the Soviet Union, getting a gold medal. So it's been a long time coming for the gold for the U.S., but they get it done today. Just some other kind of important points, too, as we mentioned, Jack Hughes, a 41 save performance by the goalie of Team USA today, Connor Hellebuck, who was just unbelievable. This marked the return of NHL players for the first time since 2014 for this format, so that's kind of why it was cool to see America bring it home. It was a 12-team tournament in Milan. It was a tough road for both of these teams, respectively, men and women. We'll start with the men just because they are the topic of the day, and then we'll get into the women as well. But the men, they ended up beating Czechia, formerly the Czech Republic, in the quarterfinal 4-3 in overtime. And then they went on to beat Finland as well. And then that was in the group stage. Then they reached the quarterfinals, beat Sweden 2-1 in overtime. Quinn Hughes, the goal in that one, the brother of Jack Hughes, and then the semifinal, Slovakia 6-2, a dominant win. And you kind of see this from the Americans. It's been a really good run for them, and they end up bringing the goal home over Canada, which is always great to beat Canada. And then for the women, we saw a great performance by them throughout the Olympics. They let up a goal in their first Olympic game, and then they let up the second goal in the final game. So they were dominant through and through. Megan Keller was the hero in the game for them in the gold medal match against Canada. They ended up beating them, and she came through with a big goal. So shout out Megan Keller, Boston College native. They won 2-1 in that one. They beat Italy in the quarterfinals 6-0, and then they beat Sweden on the women's side 5-0 in a shutout. So they were just rolling over their opponents. And shout out to America, man, both on the hockey side, both bringing home gold. It's good to see. And that's kind of just my talking points. Ben, what did you take from the Olympics, men, women, and the USA is going home in gold?
Yeah, Dan, I think it was, first of all, it was just such a thrilling match to watch today. And I'm usually not a big hockey person, but I was glued to the TV this morning, especially with the early start time. Usually not getting up at 8 a.m. to watch a hockey game, but I did for this one. And I don't regret it. I mean, this was a really, I would say it was a defensive game. From what I could tell, there was a lot of, even though it was tied up until the very end, thanks to Jack Hughes, of course, Canada had a lot more shots on goal than the United States. I mean, they were controlling the puck, especially in that second period. They were getting a lot more shots than the U.S. was, and it appeared that Canada was in control, especially when they had those instances of the power play. What I think this game shows, Dan, is that USA Hockey is not just one of the better nation teams competing in these kind of events, Olympics, even Four Nations last year. This is the USA Hockey for both men's and women's is elite in the world, I think. And not to say that we've eclipsed Canada in terms of hockey, of course, but we're certainly up there competing with them as we saw today. And it's going to take some more wins over the next few Olympics, honestly, to live up to other countries' greatness and reputation in regards to their hockey teams. But the USA is on the way, Dan, especially from that game I saw today. Just such a thrilling match. And also it's really it just keeps you on the edge of your seat when you're watching such a defensive, intense kind of game like we saw today. I mean, high scoring games are fun too, of course, but hey, look about sport we know a lot better, baseball. When it's a pitcher's duel, that can be very exciting, Dan. You know, two aces on the mound, let's say game 7 in World Series, you know, championship series for National League or American League. Those are you know, those really keep you on the edge of your seat. So I thought this was the hockey equivalent of a pitcher's, you know, two pitchers, two aces going at it. In this way, two goalies going at it. You know, just amazing defensive, especially defensive performance from the U.S. today. I thought the way they made it out unscathed is just quite incredible.
Yeah, it was a great game overall. Both teams showed their fight. Both teams showed their resilience. And it was a great game overall. You're right. For the women's side specifically, I know that they had historic ratings. About 5.3 million people tuned in to watch the gold medal game on the women's side. We'll still wait and see what we get from the men and versus Canada and see how that viewership did. But overall, like the appeal is there, and you mentioned it. Like it gets you excited to watch these games. It was a great defensive performance through and through. And great hockey games all around. We're not big hockey guys, but we do kind of appreciate the sport and what it means to not only America, but the rest of the world. It is a global sport in a lot of senses. So very cool moment for hockey and for the Olympics. We'll circle back to some other Olympic topics as we move forward, but we definitely want to make sure that we gave the respects that are due on the Olympic hockey front. Now, let's talk baseball, because that'll be our second base. And there is a little bit of an overlap, because as the Mets were warming up before their game today, before they play the Yankees, we're recording here on a Sunday morning, they were having according to Mike Puma, he had video up of it, great stuff of showing the Team USA game while the Mets are on the field warming up. Pretty cool. You know, it's that crossover. And it's the perfect time for baseball now, too, that some of these winter sports are coming to a close. Obviously, National Hockey League, National Basketball Association in America is still going, but the Olympic stuff kind of done. But it's cool to see that. And with baseball, warmer weather, right? I know we're going to get hit with some cold weather here on Long Island this Sunday, or really tomorrow. Not excited about that. It started out as just a dusting, you know, a couple inches of snow, and then you hear some updates from Mayor Mamdani in New York City, and it's just it seems to be much worse, and it does seem to be trickling out here to Long Island as well. So stay safe in the next few days. But yes, warmer weather down south as they were watching the cold weather sport of hockey. But baseball getting going. It's good to see some of these games back. It's great to have baseball back. We're not primarily a baseball podcast, but yes, we do cover this stuff, and it is important, of course, this time of year. Mets, Yankees, all of baseball getting going. World Baseball Classic just around the corner. Excited for that. College baseball around the country got going as well. Sad moment in a game for Seton Hall. They were playing Boston College, and it was 4-3, I believe, in the ninth inning. And it was a runner on, Seton Hall down, and they hit a 2-run shot to go ahead. But the kid couldn't score because he broke his foot rounding first. So just a crazy sequence there to kick off the college baseball season. But Major League Baseball season is back. It's exciting. Mets, Yankees. You saw the first game for the New York Yankees 2 days ago on Friday. Pete Alonso, Mets, Yankees, Orioles. Pete Alonso's debut in a Baltimore Orioles uniform. Great to see that. Got a great applause. And then he also went yard, which I do think for Pete, thinking about it from a Mets fan perspective, you're probably pretty upset that Pete Alonso is not a New York Met right now. And you're looking at Jorge Polanco, and you're looking at the first base situation. We'll get into the stuff with what happened with the Mets yesterday in their spring training opener. But with the Yankees, it was cool to see Pete Alonso in a new uniform. And probably not for the Yankee fan, but definitely seeing Pete in a different environment. I think Mets fans are a little angry. I think Mets fans are questioning what these moves really mean. And at the end of the day, it really comes down to how do the Mets do, because we could sit here and cry sour grapes over Pete Alonso not being a Met. The truth of the matter is he's not returning. He signed a 5-year, $155 million deal. He is going to Baltimore, and that's where he'll be probably for the remainder of his career. So for me, I look at it and say, all right, we moved on. Is this Mets team better? There's questions for sure. So I get the frustration, but it was interesting to see that Aaron Judge in the Yankees' second game of spring training. It was his debut. That was yesterday on Saturday. He went yard twice. Aaron Judge just getting ready. He's still showing he's the greatest player on the planet from an offensive standpoint. I don't expect that to change. He's Superman. He's going to carry the Yankees. And you saw that on full display yesterday. As he gets ready for the World Baseball Classic, he'll be representing the United States, similar to how Jack Hughes and these guys with the Olympics, Megan Keller as well, put USA on their back. So you're going to see that for Aaron Judge before too long. We'll have you covered here on all of the bases with the WBC content as it comes through. Getting excited for that next week. But spring training, yeah, Yankees got their games going. They play the Mets today in their third game of their spring season. The Mets, it's their second game. They played their first yesterday. Interesting things with the Mets to begin the year. Of course, the Bo Bichette clip went viral. Bo Bichette had a ball in the hole at third base. It was a long throw across the diamond to Jose Rojas, who will not be playing first base for the Mets. He played first base for the Yankees last year in AAA Scranton. He hit 32 home runs, but he's not going to be a player, and you saw that yesterday because Bo Bichette threw the ball across the diamond. Rojas brought it into the runner, kind of threw it behind his back. It was just a really bad play. Where you're looking at Pete Alonso a year ago for the Mets playing first base, he would have known to just get that ball and tag the runner like we've seen him do many times. So kind of frustrating to see that, I'm sure, from a Mets fan perspective, but it's early in spring training. I'm not looking at Bo Bichette. I know he hasn't been a great defender his whole career, but I think he's going to figure it out. So that was kind of just the stuff in Mets land yesterday. They did lose 2-1 to the Marlins in their spring training opener. Ronnie Mauricio stole a base, which was good to see, getting the wheels going for Ronnie again. The top 1 through 3 of Marcus Semien, Juan Soto, and Bo Bichette, really the only 3 players probably worth watching really seriously yesterday. If you want the truth, they went 0 for 6. But it's just another reminder of it's a long spring training. These guys are just getting into their routines from the offensive side. Pitchers are always ahead of spring training when it comes to the hitters. That's just been a tale as old as time. Pitchers are ahead of the game. So I'm not too worried about where the Mets are right now. And shout out AJ Ewing. AJ Ewing, Mets prospect, put on a show yesterday, had the only Mets run. It was a sacrifice fly in the 8th inning. And then he had a great outfield assist in the 9th inning as well. So AJ Ewing was a positive yesterday. Not many other positives to take away from the Mets' first game. Brandon Waddell pitched well out of the gate. Carl Edwards Jr., Huascar Brazoban, Ben Simon, Austin Warren. So they had a good mix of pitchers, but overall it's just getting into the spring season. And quickly on the prospect side for the Yankees, Spencer Jones went yard yesterday, along with Aaron Judge, who went yard twice. So you're seeing the youth. For the Mets today against the Yankees, they're getting excited because Carson Bench is making his spring training debut, the highly anticipated prospect for the New York Mets. Odds are number 1 prospect, number 2, potentially behind Nolan McLean. Carson Bench could break camp in right field, but you have to see how he does from the Mets perspective. So we'll get to see him for the first time today. We'll get to see Ryan Clifford, who we did see in spring training last year, but we'll get to see Clifford in 2026 for the first time. So all cool stuff. All really, really cool stuff. Excited to have baseball back. And Ben, what have you made from these first couple of days of spring training?
Well, you kind of said it yourself, Dan, the rust, especially for the hitters. You know, I always notice that, unfortunately, especially for the Mets, and historically have been known as a pitcher's kind of franchise. I think we both agree on that, is a lot of times even our superstars are starting out really cold, especially in spring training, but also, unfortunately, sometimes that goes into the season. Now, I'm not predicting that for anybody, but I'm just saying a lot of times it takes your star hitter or your group of generally good hitters overall, good power hitters and contact hitters. They could have a rough start. Now, again, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I'm looking forward to, speaking of starts, how Carson Bench is going to do today. Every Mets fan is rooting for him, hoping he's going to have a great spring training and then maybe get pushed up to a starter on opening day. And it all depends. I think spring training is a time where you can experiment, let him out there and in the outfield and see how he does, getting a lot of those reps in. I mean, that's what spring training is for ultimately. And I know some people get tired of, they turn on a spring training game and barely any of their, familiar starters are playing. But this is the time when you have, someone from the minors who's making a name for themselves. And this is the ideal time for that. So what I'm looking to see, especially, is what do we see from Carson Bench today in the lineup? I'm not sure. Maybe you would know, Dan, where he's batting in the lineup. I believe it could be
he's leading off.
Leading off, yes, because I was just looking at that. So leadoff position, obviously very important. And we'll see how he does in that position through spring training. And then maybe, let's say, if he struggles a little bit leading off, maybe they still start him to start out the season, Dan, but they don't put him in the leadoff position in the lineup. A lot of things to be retooled and to see what happens. But I'm hoping that we're going to see Carson Bench in right field on opening day, Dan. That's what I'm hoping. And also I want to see how Bo Bichette does a third. I know you said that he's going to take time to get used to his new position there. And obviously that, you have to have a little patience when you're adjusting to that. And he's going to be a great power hitter in this Mets lineup. And, defensively, we saw yesterday, not doing an overt criticism of this, but he had a little hiccup, so to speak, had that ground out. I watched that. And again, that was also, correct me if I'm wrong, that was kind of a little bit of a tough play. That wasn't the easiest routine play.
That's not his fault. No.
Yeah. So really, you have to be patient with the young guys, but also with new guys who have come in, who are adjusting to the team, to the organization, to the new position. So this is a time, spring training is always a time of optimism for whatever team you're a fan of. And of course, depending on how your team's doing, that optimism can dissipate by All-Star weekend or All-Star week in July. But this Mets team has promised, Sam, but I'm interested to see some of those storylines of how are they gonna adjust in terms of Bichette and Polanco in terms of their positions. How's Carson Bench gonna do leading off, and also in terms of the bullpen, who's gonna grab the final few spots in the Mets bullpen. I mean, really, since Edwin Diaz left, Dan, I think now I know we got some new additions since Diaz left, but that kind of opened things up to where things are now. And we'll just have to see what happens and who's going to rise to the top. That's the storyline. That's the question.
There's a lot, Ben. You hit on a lot of those narratives people are wondering right now. It's positionless baseball. It feels like, with Bichette at third base, Polanco at first. These guys never played the positions. People wondering and kind of critiquing very harshly when it comes to Bichette. After one Mets spring training game, people are calling him a DH by June. I find it very insulting.
Unfair.
Yeah, it's insulting.
It's like, and my response to that is, and I say this in basketball too, when someone is really getting on one of the Knicks or even Cat these days. Now I have my frustrations with certain players of the teams I watch, of course, as any fan does. But I always like to say when people criticize that, it's like, all right, let's see you out there at third base. Let's see you. Let's see you try to do a routine double play, a ground ball, what have you. Obviously, the answer is most people would fail spectacularly, especially on television. But the truth is, you just have to be patient. These guys are under a lot of pressure, and they're going to adjust. You just have to give them time. They're professional baseball players, and I think you talk about positionless baseball, Dan. I think that's also related in a way to what some people have called the death of the starting pitcher. How, some pitchers are just going a couple innings. They got one guy going 3 innings, and they got the next guy from third to the 6th inning and what have you. I think that's related to everything is becoming fluid now. There's less boundaries of he's a first base or he's a shortstop or that's a starting pitcher. It's not a reliever. Those boundaries as baseball continues to evolve into this ever changing era in here in the modern world of there's no set positions, there's no set roles, and some people may not like that. I understand that, but that's the way it's going. I think that's also a part of analytics, just kind of dissolving those boundaries of whatever is the most efficient way to win. That's what we're going to do. Whoever needs to be plugged in there, that's the way we're going to do it to help us get the most possible wins on the board, to maximize our productivity. And so I think those two things are tied together. I just wanted to mention that.
No, and I think it's very reflective of society too. People are kind of questioning, it's a positionless society. What is a man? What is a woman? People are very confused nowadays. So I think you're right, Ben. It's kind of crazy the world we live in. Sporting world definitely changing, and these players adjusting, and that's the most important thing. Quickly with the back end of the pen before we get off this baseball segment on second base, we'll get to shortstop in a second. Mention back end of the pen, Ben. I think you're 100% right. Mets have a really good back end of the pen. Craig Kimbrell turning some heads in camp for the Mets. So I do think there's a chance that Craig Kimbrell could be the closer of this team. In Mets circles, I have made that known. I do feel that to be true. And I think a lot of what you're hearing from camp is backing that up. Because of Edwin Diaz, going back to the point you made before, like not having him in this pen and knowing what we know of that the Mets at the time wanted to bring back Edwin Diaz and Devin Williams at the same time, it shows me that there's still some potential piece for that back end of the pen that they could be looking for, because Devin Williams is a better setup man than he is a closer, in my opinion. But we'll move off baseball. Excited to get going. We have our second game for the Mets beginning at 1:05 against the Yankees and their third game of their spring training season. Let's go through these starting lineups very quickly. Carson Bench leading off for the Mets, playing right. Mark Vientos at first, batting second. Luis Torrens behind the plate, catching. Jared Young DHing for the Mets, batting fourth. Christian Arroyo playing third, batting fifth. Ryan Clifford in left, batting sixth. Vidal Brujan playing second base, batting seventh. Christian Pache playing center field, batting eighth. And Greg Kessinger playing shortstop, rounding out the Mets lineup behind Justin Hagenman today. And then the New York Yankees have their starting lineup out there as well. Trent Grisham in center field. Aaron Judge batting second, DHing. Cody Bellinger in left, batting third. Jazz Chisholm batting fourth, playing second. Paul Goldschmidt at first base, batting fifth. Austin Wells behind the plate, batting sixth. Ahmed Rosario, former Met, playing third, batting seventh. Yankel Fernandez playing right field, batting eighth for the Bronx Bombers. And Jose Caballero rounding it out for them, playing short behind Luis Gil today at 1:05 Mets Yankees. So we'll move off baseball. Excited to keep the spring training season going. I will be down there when the Mets play the Yankees again. That'll be March 8th at Clover Park. So excited for that. And maybe we'll do an all the bases little recording. You never know. We'll see. But anyway, let's get off baseball. Let's move it now to our shortstop segment, and we'll bring it back to the Olympics because there were some interesting storylines throughout the Olympics. It is the lead on this show today because the USA just won gold, and we're feeling very patriotic this morning. And there are some storylines that went into these Olympics that we're going to have to stop short on the shortstop segment. But I want to start with Eileen Gu. Who is Eileen Gu? Eileen Gu is a skier. And Eileen Gu is competing for China when she was born in America. And this has caused some, pushback from some political figures, specifically the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, kind of going at her and saying that if you were born in this country and if you're getting funding and assistance from this country, then you should represent America. But, Eileen Gu pushed back. She said, it feels like a lot of people don't understand. I in a lot of ways, I'm winning. And if I'm winning, people really wouldn't be saying the things that they're saying. And she was kind of going back at that whole narrative. And then you had Enes Kanter as well. And I'll bring up these quotes right now. Enes Kanter is a former New York Knick. And as you guys see right there's his quotes. Enes Kanter spoke, and this is courtesy of the New York Post. He told Fox's Laura Ingraham on The Angle, quote, "She chose to play for a country that is literally responsible for the deaths of tens of millions of its own people and literally running a concentration camp while we're talking. Freedom said, comparing Gu's silence on the issue to LeBron James's declining a question about China's alleged human rights abuses in 2019. There's a nice picture of Eileen Gu, very pretty lady for sure. He said it's like a play. He said whenever the human rights issues are raised about China, they all stop talking about it. Gu is the highest paid Winter Olympic athlete in the world. So this is why she's getting a lot of this blowback, because you're getting paid and you're making money. Arguably, I could see the gray area where people are falling into, for sure. An estimated 23 million in 2025 alone amid partnerships with Chinese companies, including the Bank of China, Western companies. Gu has said she represents China for her mother, who was born there. I'm not going to go too much into it, but I just wanted to kind of raise this point to you, Ben. You're an American. I'm an American. How do you feel about this situation? Because this is not the first one. Many athletes choose to represent other countries, but do you think in this case it's a little bit weird?
I think there's a point to be made that it can be a little bit of a bad look, in terms of raised in, I believe, on the West Coast in San Francisco, beautiful part of the country, and was born in the United States. And you can make the point, Dan, that if you were born here, were raised in the environment where you got opportunities to train yourself, to become an athlete here, and then to compete for the country that your heritage is from. I mean, obviously that's respectable. I'm not saying that someone hypothetically shouldn't compete if they were born in the United States, but I think it's reasonable for her to have expected some criticism for that. I don't think that's out of the question for questioning her decision to compete for China, especially when, as you noted, she's made some money from millions of dollars from deals with China. So there's always going to be scrutiny whenever you make a decision like that. I mean, I remember even Karl Anthony Towns, then, going to basketball for a brief second, he got questioned, not anything, not any real scrutiny, but he was asked why was he competing for Dominican Republic as opposed to the United States when he was born in New Jersey when the Summer Olympics were happening, which is 2 years ago. And he basically said that he feels very connected to Dominican Republic. He has a lot of connections there. Of course,
He's playing for Team World too, very recently, right?
Right, absolutely. So I'm not saying, oh, it's not my place to say, oh, you can't do that. But I think what needs to be said is you should be, if you're a public figure, unfortunately, and you're an athlete, especially in this social media age, just be prepared to be under a microscope for any decision that you make, especially regarding representation of whatever country you're playing for. I think it's a difficult conversation, but sometimes, I mean, it's bound to happen when something comes up like this, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And we'll stop short because I think it does get into some questions that we're not properly equipped, like, certain stuff within family dynamics and stuff like that. It can get a little gray area, but overall, yeah, I just wanted to bring out the topic and certainly address it because it was one that got a lot of interest around the Olympics, which a lot of these stories tend to do. They're very niche, sports driven stories, which often have a lot of political overlap as well, unfortunately. But when you're dealing with countries, that's kind of how it goes. So we'll get off the shortstop segment. Wanted to just shout out Eileen Gu. And we mentioned Enes Kanter. So Enes Kanter, obviously a Knick, and I want to talk about the Knicks because, Ben, this Knicks team right now, good win against the Rockets. Good win against the Rockets yesterday, but that Pistons game a couple nights ago, kind of worrying right now for the Knicks. Knicks right now currently sit at a 36-21 record, third place in the Eastern Conference. So right now, Ben, how are you looking at the final stretch run for the Knicks, and are you worried?
Well, I am worried, Dan. I'll just say that. I mean, the Pistons game was really
Awful.
It was awful. But honestly, Dan, in some ways, I think people have such short term memories nowadays. What was even more embarrassing to me was the second to last game before the All-Star break against the Pacers. And the Pacers are one of the worst teams in the East this year. No Tyrese Halliburton because of the horrible injury that he suffered in Game 7 of the NBA Finals last year. And the Pacers are, they're just they're not a good team this year. And they were playing the Knicks at the Garden in the second to last game for the All-Star break. You're expecting that should be an easy win. And instead, this game is, extremely close. It's back and forth with a bunch of lead changes. It's like you're watching the conference finals from last year all over again, Dan. And except this is a regular season game, and there's no Tyrese Halliburton or there's no Miles Turner for the Pacers either. And so you're watching that, and I'm thinking a contending team should not be competitive. It should not be playing a competitive game with one of the worst teams in the East. The team that is constructed is built to win the East and potentially even win the NBA Finals. That's not acceptable to be in such a close game. And then not only that, I should reveal, to lose to the Pacers in overtime. And they were lucky they got to overtime because Karl-Anthony Towns was fouled on the last minute. And he made the 2 free throws, and then they tied it, went to overtime. That loss really stuck with me, Dan. And it's part of this trend this year that I'm not sure this Knicks team knows exactly who they are. They're having a bit of a identity crisis. I know that might seem weird to say, especially after such a great win last night against the Rockets, which was a great win. Watched it. And but even last night, they were down at 1 point 18 to the Rockets, and it was a miraculous comeback that they won. It was I believe it was the largest comeback of the season. It was actually the largest lead the Rockets have blown in the past few years. I forget the exact number of years, but that's part of what made it a great win last night is that comeback. But the Rockets are not known as the best team in the West, and they're definitely up there competing with teams like the Lakers, teams like the Spurs, the Thunder at the top, of course. But the Rockets are not necessarily expected to come out of the West. I mean, they're supposed to be a tier below contending, at least in my view, as they're not seen as the favorite or even the runner-up to head to the finals, to come out of the West. And the fact that the Knicks, who at the start of this year, Dan, were projected, were built to be the team that comes out of the East, to be losing by 18 and have to do a miraculous comeback to a team that is not really supposed to come out of the West. That's not technically, I mean, the Rockets are a good team. Don't get me wrong. Kevin Durant, still great, still a top 10 player, I believe, especially at his age. Credit to him. And had a great game last night, especially heating up towards the end. This Rockets team is good, but they're not supposed to be the best. They're not supposed to be excellent or great. They're not the Thunder or even necessarily the Spurs. And Shaq, who I usually disagree with and sometimes honestly find him a little irritating during his halftime. I love Inside the NBA. I love I'm glad they switched over to ESPN and they still have the same crew and everything, even the same theme song, which is cool. But usually Shaq I end up being annoyed with the most because of his takes. Usually sometimes he has a bit of an anti-Knicks bias because he did play for the Magic for a couple of years, of course. But Shaq was saying that during halftime, this Rockets team is good, but they're not better than the Spurs or the Thunder, at least not right now. And my point is then it's that this Knicks team was down 18 to a team that is not necessarily going to be coming out of the West. That's just not supposed to be happening. And I know that every personality, guys at the Fan, guys on ESPN New York, Knicks world, the podcasters, the influencers, what have you. They're going to say, oh, it's early, it's still middle of the regular season. The Knicks were not good against contending teams last year in the regular season, which is correct. But still, you think about how this group, this general core has been together. This is their second season now. And they're still having these games where they're just losing to teams. They're looking listless. They're looking soft, for no other better term to say it, against teams that they should be beating on paper, at least having close games, which again, maybe I'm going too much into this for a game that the Knicks won, and it's a great game. But the point is, they shouldn't have had to have a miraculous comeback. They shouldn't have had to come back down from 18. That's not how this team is supposed to be playing. So it raises a lot of question marks for going into the playoffs. And obviously the playoffs are a totally different beast. And as you know, Dan, last year the Knicks switched it on in the playoffs. They beat the Pistons in that 6-game series. Then they beat Boston in 6, and what was one of the most incredible series to watch as a Knicks fan, as someone who has covered the team in my lifetime. And then losing to the Pacers in 6. They had a deep run last year, but a lot of that, I have to say, obviously was talent, obviously it was hard work and execution, but some of that was luck. A fair amount of it was. I mean, to come back down from, you talk about coming back down from something like 18 points, Dan, that's what happened in game 1 and game 2 of the Boston series last year away in Boston. So are you expecting this team to head into the playoffs? And let's say they're going up against the Cavs in the second round, who are a scary team now with James Harden. I just want to say, as a side point, I was randomly flipping through the channels on my TV, and I'm old school. I have cable.
Sure.
Flipping through the channels, and I see Cavs Nets on, and the Cavs are now, it's against the Nets. So, or excuse me, wrong one. Nets. But the Nets are losing to the Cavs with a minute to go in the third quarter, 100-62. And this Cavs team is, I mean, the Nets are bad, yes, but it's also that the Cavs, I think, are that good offensively. And so this Knicks team up against the Cavs in the playoffs, and I know historically over the past few years, the Knicks have had Cleveland's number, beating them in the 2023 first round. And then the Cavs choked it last year. They haven't gotten over the hump yet, but this Cavs team this year offensively, they've switched it up a little bit. They made some adjustments, some roster changes. As of right now, I don't know if this Knicks team can, much less beat the Pistons, Dan. I don't know if they can beat the Cavs in a series, because what are we going to expect? Are we going to expect the hot and cold, off and on kind of character of what they've been this season? I mean, they've had great stretches this season, Dan, but going into the playoffs, can you count on a miraculous 20-point comeback every time? I know the Pacers did that in their trip to the finals last year. The Knicks did it plenty of times in the playoffs last year, but you can't count on the clutch gene of Jalen Brunson and the team as a whole to carry them the victory each time. So what I saw, especially in that Pistons game, Dan, that Pistons team is better fundamentally. They're just more fundamentally sound than this Knicks team right now, especially defensively. They're younger, they're more hungry, and God forbid, as a Knicks fan, I guess not quite being objective, but as a fan, you have to be scared if, let's say, the Knicks reach it again to the conference finals this year against Detroit. I don't know if how they're going to do in that matchup, especially with the Pistons having a chip on their shoulder from last year. So I just want to say this is a weird time. I think the team is still working out the kinks. Obviously, I don't want to say it's end of the world, but there's a lot of issues, fundamental issues with this team, Dan, especially with Cat and Brunson on the floor together at the same time. People have talked about that. That is not good defensively. You just see it on paper. You see it out there in the possessions. Cat and Brunson. I think that it's going to be determined. Last thing I'll say, Dan, sorry, I've been going on.
All good, Ben.
Cat and Brunson, it's going to be the final judgment this year's playoffs of whether those two on the court together can win a championship, or can even make it to the finals, because that is a liability with Cat defense, and also Brunson, of course. But can two defensive liabilities be on the court together at the same time while trying to make up for that on offense, which sometimes they haven't? You know, they're not doing a lot of pick and roll together, and I know there's more to offense than pick and roll. But Cat and Brunson, that's going to be up in the air as a duo if they don't reach to the point they want to make it this year, Dan. And I think that's what we should be looking for. That's the question mark. You know, we'll just have to see what happens. But Cat had a great game last night. And Shaq, actually, it's funny enough, he was saying in the post game interview with Cat on the on ESPN post game, he was saying, Cat, you have to have a killer mentality. And then Chuck was making the point that some players are nice guys. That doesn't mean you can't be a good player and not have a killer mentality, but you know, it's about, do you want to dominate and be just a unstoppable force, especially in the paint, on the floor. And Cat has that potential. He has that. That's why the Knicks traded for him. He can knock down the three, but he can also punish you inside the paint. And we're just going to have to see this year's playoff run, Dan, on what happens.
Sure. And we'll talk about Shaq as we bring in our top 15 NBA to wrap up this segment in just a minute, in this episode as a whole. But Ben, I wanted to get a quick question with the Knicks for you, because when they fired Tom Thibodeau, we both looked at each other and said, okay, Mike Brown, your job now is to take this team to make the finals, right? That's all you got to do. And if you want the truth, like, have you seen enough difference between the coaches? And honestly, to me, I have not. The bench is not being as used as much as it was early in the season. You brought in Alvarado and Sohan, kind of blocked out some other guys. Obviously, no Deuce McBride, but Kolek's not playing. Diawara is not playing. Like, there's still issues with the bench. So have you seen enough from Mike Brown that if he doesn't make the finals, he's not fired?
Well, I don't know if he's going to be. I agree with your sentiment, Dan, of what you're saying.
You get what I'm saying? Like, has he done enough?
I do think, regardless of what Mike Brown does this year, Dan, I think the Knicks, I think this organization, James Dolan, Leon Rose, I don't think that they would fire Mike Brown after the first season, even if it's unsuccessful. Even if they haven't seen enough, because it's a bad look, and it creates a sense of chaos associated with the Knicks as an organization that they've been trying to move away from. The Knicks have done a huge PR cleanup in the past few years, Dan, and Jalen Brunson has been a huge part of that. You just have to look at the Knicks 10 years ago, when we were in middle school, when we were in early high school, and you know, even the beginning of college. You know,
Dolan hated the media,
right? Not just that. I mean, he still kind of hates the media, to be honest, but it was that the Knicks were associated with, unfortunately, toxicity, with instability, with drama, with a sense of, oh, the Knicks, I don't want to touch that. And it's with Tom Thibodeau, it's with Jalen Brunson, it's even with credit to him, Julius Randle. You know, over the past half decade, they built up that reputation from where it was in the gutter to where it is now. And I'll say this, if the Knicks fired Mike Brown after one season, that would turn back the clock a little bit, in my view, in terms of making them look like an organization that doesn't know what it's doing, and they do not want to appear that way. So I don't think, regardless of what happens with the team or what they think of what Mike Brown has done, they wouldn't fire Mike Brown at the end of the season. Maybe if it was 2 unsuccessful seasons in a row with the roster change and still the same thing, maybe after next season. But I don't know if they do it after the first season with Mike Brown.
That's fair. I had to raise the question. To me, I'm always going to go back on that point, Ben. Why'd you even fire Tibbs to begin with? Just let him finish out his contract.
I agree.
Yeah. I know you've been a big Tibbs guy, and I respect that about you. And we'll see what happens with the Knicks. But they have the second half of back-to-back tonight out there in Chicago against the Bulls. Then they'll play Tuesday out there in Cleveland against the Cavs. Next Friday out there in Milwaukee against the Bucks, and then back home March 1st, the first day of March, that's Sunday at 1 o'clock against the Spurs. Wemby coming to the Garden. So little road trip for the Knicks, and we'll see if they can continue. Hopefully they're winning ways after last night. But as you said, Ben, it should not have been a comeback in the way that it was. But we'll keep tabs on the Knicks as the season rolls along, and hopefully a nice finish to this season, and hopefully a nice little postseason run for sure. Let's round third. Let's get ready to head for home. And we covered a lot today, which is great. Olympics, baseball, basketball, college hoops this weekend too. You saw UConn beat Villanova, but UConn also lost to Creighton earlier in the week on Wednesday. And obviously, you have a big game coming up this Wednesday. St. John's going up to Storrs, the basketball capital of the world. Hurley versus Patino rematch. St. John's got the best of UConn the first time around at the Garden. We'll see what happens up there in Connecticut this Wednesday. So that's something of note. And then lastly, just kind of wanted to give you guys the list that we promised. I put out on my X page a top 10 pitchers list, which I want to go over next week. But here's a top 15 NBA player list that I have here for you guys that I will share in just 1 second. Here it is. And this is my top 15 NBA players of all time. And it's pretty simple, and there's reasons. I'm not going to shy away from my reasons. But number one, it's pretty obvious who the greatest basketball player to me. It's Michael Jeffrey Jordan, followed by LeBron James. I'm glad we agree. Again, greatest player of all time, LeBron, like the greatest created basketball player. Right. If I closed my eyes and said,
I agree.
6'8", 250, point guard handle, that's LeBron. But Michael was the winner.
I agree. Totally agree.
He wanted to kill you on the court. So it's a little bit different. Obviously, Ben and I too young to see Michael Jordan, but we've watched The Last Dance. We've played a lot of 2K, and we've talked to older generations of basketball fans to get the opinion as well. Number 3 is Kareem.
Agree.
All-time leading scorer in NBA history, the greatest center of all time. I think this is a pretty standard 1 through 3 for most people. Like, I was not trying to ruffle any feathers. I started ruffling some feathers with number 4, Bill Russell. I understand Shaq is probably looked at as the better center. You could even say Bill Russell was more of like a power forward, but again, the guy won 11 titles. Winning is the ultimate goal in sports. I can't leave the guy outside of the top 5. That's just me. So Bill Russell, number 4. Magic Johnson for me, number 5, just because of what he was able to do. I know some people nowadays in our generation, Ben, when you ask them who is the greatest point guard of all time, they'll tell you Steph Curry. And I'm getting to that level, but I can't.
I don't know if I can say that yet. And I'm part of the Gen Z generation. I'm 24. You're 23. Mm-hmm. If I can just chip in a little bit.
Go right ahead.
I totally agree, Dan, with 1 through 3. I couldn't agree more. I think that's perfect. And a lot of people say that Michael Jordan and LeBron, that's 1A and 1B. Like it's interchangeable, but really it's Jordan at the top just because, 6 championships, was also such a great player defensively. And LeBron was too, but sometimes LeBron would sag off, especially towards the end of his career. Jordan was still an elite player on defense, even into his early to mid 30s. As LeBron is as well. But Jordan, it's just the fact that he won Defensive Player of the Year as a guard is just super impressive.
How many times did LeBron win Defensive Player of the Year?
0.
There you go, a little goose egg.
I remember, just a fun fact for our listeners and for you, Dan, I remember LeBron saying in an interview once, I forget who it was with specifically, but he said that one of his goals was to be Defensive Player of the Year. Now he's never going to get it, unfortunately. But I think LeBron absolutely had the tools to be Defensive Player of the Year if he wanted to. But that wasn't, winning is his priority, and that wasn't, focusing on getting an award is not necessarily his main focus when you're trying to just win games with your team and get as far as you want to go. And ultimately the goal is to reach a championship, win a championship. And Kareem, of course, totally agree. One of the all-time greats. And also has done a lot of good stuff off the court too.
Yeah.
Seems like not just seems, he is a great person. And So totally agree with that first three. Bill Russell, I don't think, as Stephen A would say, that's blasphemous. For me, I don't think it's blasphemous because Bill Russell, as you said, he's known for being a winner. I mean, look at the pictures of him where he's holding up the two hands with the ring on each finger. But I would put Wilt where Russell is, and then I'd probably put Russell where Kobe is,
and then put Kobe where Wilt is at 10.
Yeah, absolutely. Except I'd put Kobe above Curry. I'll say that, and I'd put Bird where Curry is. Yeah.
Okay. I like it, man. Listen, this is why we talk this stuff out. Bill's an interesting one. I know people prioritize different things when they make these lists.
Yeah.
I look at winning, man. I look at Jordan in the same light. Like, that's just for me.
I totally see where it comes from. But me personally, Wilt, I mean, he was absolutely dominant. You can say the same thing about Shaq, but Wilt really, he was a giant, quite literally, among men. And so I put Wilt at 4. Magic, I agree, at 5. Arguably still the de facto greatest point guard of all time.
Right.
And I put Bird at 6. Magic and Bird interchangeable. I'd keep Shaq at 7. And then I'd put who did I say? I'd have Bill Russell at I believe is 8.
Where Curry is, yeah.
Curry, yeah. Duncan, I agree, is top 10. Mr. Fundamentals, just one of the greatest big men of all time. And then we talked about Wilt already. We put who we put there? Actually, Kobe. We put Kobe around 10 or 11.
I'm a big Kobe guy.
Well, of course. I mean, how can you not be? And Kobe, one thing I'll say is iconic, known just for so many memorable performances. But I don't like it, especially some people who are just delusional when they'd say, even a couple years ago, "Oh, Kobe's better than LeBron." It's like that conversation. Let me just say that conversation ended in like 2012, 2013. I hate to say it. I'm a Kobe fan. I have some Kobe jerseys. I have like 2 Kobe jerseys in my jersey collection. And scored 81 points in the game. But I will say that one issue that Kobe had is in the NBA Finals or in the playoffs in particular. He wasn't the most efficient compared to some other superstars, some other greats. He didn't shoot quite as well. Kobe actually, compared to, I mean, it's obviously you grade it on a curve because the game has evolved and a lot more threes nowadays. But Kobe was not the greatest 3-point shooter. I mean, sometimes he'd average, around 30%. And same thing with Jordan too. Jordan didn't start shooting them until late in his career because that's the way the game was. But I'm just saying that Kobe was not quite as efficient as some of the other greats in terms of scoring, even though we know him as a scorer, which he was. But still, Kobe was excellent, amazing athleticism, also a good playmaker too. I think that's an underappreciated aspect of him. People would always post these memes when we were growing up. I don't know if you remember, Dan.
Kobe?
Well, not just that, but Kobe wouldn't pass the ball. And that's not true, actually. I mean, Kobe would average like 4 assists in multiple seasons. He was a playmaker. He was, he wasn't obviously a point guard. He was a shooting guard, but he could facilitate the offense and be the one bringing it up down the court and being in charge of leading that offense, making the right pass at the right time. So Kobe, I think right. Those I remember those memes growing up. Dan, I'll just say that. You see, I do pass. Or Kobe passed. I thought that was totally unfair criticism. So I'll just say. But I do think Kobe is not necessarily top 5, but I think you can make the case top 10 all time, and definitely top 15. So I'll just say that, and let's see some of the others here quickly. It's we got
figure it out. I don't know why it's being annoying, but yes, that's kind of what we're looking at. So let's keep it going. With the StreamYard thing, it is what it is. But yeah, so let's keep it going. I'd Shaq at 7, Kobe at 6, Curry at 8. For me, I just look at these players a little different. Larry, I disrespected, not really meaning to put him at 11, but it just kind of, fell that way.
Yeah.
So it is what it is. But overall, yeah, Wilt needs to be higher. Looking back at it, probably, but I know Wilt wasn't playing against some of the greatest guys on planet Earth, so it was a little bit of a knock for him. Um, Shaq, I can't ignore what Shaq brings to the table, obviously, but I had to put him above a guy like Tim Duncan. There were certain thresholds where I looked at players and said, okay, Magic needs to be ahead of Steph. Shaq needs to be ahead of Tim. Magic needs to be ahead of Larry, if you want the truth, but some people do push back on that. Larry should be top 10. I do kind of redact that. Hakeem Olajuwon, can't ignore Dream Shake, what he brought to the game. This is where I kind of started bringing in some of the personal, more what we have seen in our lifetime, Ben, with Kevin Durant. Huge Kevin Durant.
I agree with that, Dan. I agree that Kevin Durant at this point, it is entirely fair and reasonable, Dan, to say Kevin Durant's top 15 all time.
Yeah. I mean,
look at him last night, Dan. The guy is, I believe now he's 37 years old, and he's 37 years old. It's going to be 38 this September, and he's averaging this season 26, 5, and 4 on 50% shooting and 40%. Let's see, from 40% from 3. That's excellent. I mean, he had 30 points last night versus the Knicks. He's still an incredibly efficient player at his age.
Sure.
Kevin Durant is still an elite. He's still an elite player. And at the end of his career, when it's all said and done, Dan, regardless of how, a long time ago now, people felt about him going to Golden State, which I had feelings about that when I was a freshman going in the sophomore year when that happened in high school. I was rightfully upset. And some people say that'll taint him, but it's like, Kevin Durant is a elite scorer. He is just the way he's built. He's so smooth in terms of the way he's able to just create a shot. I used to say in the 2010s, when I was growing up, first really getting into the NBA, Dan, the best scorers that I watched, the scores that just made it look effortless when they scored the basketball, it was Kevin Durant and Carmelo Anthony. And especially Kevin Durant, because of just his length, his wingspan, his ability to get where he wanted to get that shot off. I totally agree with Kevin Durant being top 15. I think that's perfectly reasonable and deserving for KD.
Sure. Yeah, Kate, listen, when we talk about Kevin Durant, there's a lot of people, I'm not one of them, but they'll swear by he is the greatest player scoring wise who has ever picked up a basketball. Just his ability to get to his spot, his ability to rise up and elevate. He's a 7-foot point guard. And he's just a guy who loves the game. And he kind of just focuses on the game. And I do appreciate that about Kevin Durant. Anytime you ask him about anything outside of basketball, he kind of just brings it back to hooping. And when they ask him, how long do you want to play? He always goes back to, I just wanted to be in the league when I was a little kid. And that's all I've ever wanted to do is be in the league. So as long as I can be in the league, I'm going to do it as long as I can. That's the kind of stuff that I really love. Because if I was sitting in Kevin Durant's spot, and I wish more athletes thought like this, I want to play as long as I possibly can. I don't care if my one leg is falling off. I just want to be out there. You see that with baseball more often, like Justin Verlander still going out there and doing what he's doing. I appreciate that. And then kind of rounding it out here, the top 15, Kevin Durant at 13, Oscar Robertson at 14, and Nikola Jokic at 15. And I specifically put Jokic, and honestly, he might be past Oscar. I know this list was like a week and a half ago, but at this point, on February 7th of this year, Jokic passed Oscar Robertson for second place on the all-time regular season triple-doubles list, recording his 182nd career double against the Bulls. He did it with 22 points, 17 assists, 14 rebounds. Oscar was great. He was a walking triple-double, but that's kind of the reason. If you wanted an updated list, I think Jokic is now 14th all time on and he's climbing. He's going to be top 10 very quickly. He is so good at basketball. But that's it. Out of our generation that we've seen, Ben, with our own eyes when it comes to basketball, I think we kind of narrowed it down. Kevin Durant, LeBron, Kobe, Steph, Jokic. I
Yeah.
don't know if there's really any others that we're missing. Russell Westbrook, James Harden. No, these guys are not
Yeah,
all.
no, I don't know if either of those guys. Respect
No. Kyrie Irving.
both of them. Well, no, definitely not. I mean, respect to all of those guys you just mentioned.
Yeah,
I don't know if they're quite top 15.
no.
I will say this: this is a very unpopular opinion. I bet, and it may turn some heads. Nikola Jokic is an excellent player. He is rightfully so. You could already say he's top 15 all time. Rightfully so. He's elite. The way he can open the floor. He's part of the new generation of bigs that can shoot. Of the new wave that took over the league. I would say starting when can you say bigs are really starting to shoot? I mean, really, probably that was happening in the mid late 2010s. I mean, well, Dirk was the pioneer.
Mhm.
Dirk was definitely the pioneer, but Dirk was like the very first one that I can think of right now.
Probably Cat. I mean, in terms of what,
Cat and Jokic, that was part of that same time period. Cat was the 2015 draft, I believe. Jokic was 2014. Maybe you could look that up. I'm not sure. I believe it is. But my unpopular opinion about
2014, 41st overall.
Yep, and that's amazing, incredible in and of itself that he was, picked so late. It's kind of similar to Brunson in that fashion. I'm not saying Brunson is better or the same level as Jokic as a player, but
Andrew Wiggins and Joel Embiid went first and third
in 2014. Yeah. And Joel Embiid, even though he was drafted in 2014, if you remember, Dan, he didn't play his first game as a rookie until 2017. Because of his countless injuries. But still one of the great players in this generation. But my unpopular opinion about Jokic, I want to get to.
Yeah.
I don't like watching him play. I don't like, he's very, I know this is going to sound like a 13-year-old's opinion, but it's just very boring. It's like, you can say that about Tim Duncan, but for me, it's my personal pet peeve. You can say that I'm, ignorant, or I'm not ignoring or denying his greatness and his efficiency, which of course he has. And he's also a champion, thanks to his 2023 win over Miami. But watching Jokic play for me has never been exciting. Like it's just, he gets the job done, but it's, for me, it's not like, it's not, for lack of a better term, Dan, it's not sexy basketball. It's not, it's not kind of glistening or show off kind of, for me, Jokic he's the guy that, and even with his attitude as well, he goes to work, brings the lunch pail, he's in and out, and that's, the day is done. He's there to help his team win and get his points, get his assists, rebounds, those triple doubles that he's known for. But he's like, bring your lunch pail to work kind of guy. And I think that's also evident in, his post-game interview in the finals, Dan, where they said, how do you feel? And he's like, oh, we won. It's time to go home now. And, basically he was just saying, like, so matter-of-factly, they just won an NBA championship. But that's kind of the way his game is. He's bread and butter, gets it done, maybe kind of not so glamorous. Maybe that was a better word I was looking for to describe his game. But he's definitely well-deserved one of the top 15, touching now in the top 15 of all time. So not, again, I hope people don't take that or misinterpret what I was saying. I'm not saying he isn't an elite, one of the greats, one of the great big men of all time. But for me personally, watching him play was I never got that excited. I wouldn't like turn on a game. I can't wait to see Jokic dominate. For me, even though I can't stand him as a fan, and even covering when the Knicks were playing up against the Sixers in the first round in 2024, Embiid is for me subjectively, and Joel Embiid was much more fun to watch than Jokic, and I couldn't stand Embiid, but for me, Embiid is a little more flashy. than Jokic.
Sure.
And that doesn't matter at the end of the day. What you said, Dan, is winning. Winning is all that matters. And Jokic is a winner. Embiid is not, thankfully.
Yeah, right.
But I will say that, Jokic, not the most flashiest player, but at the end of the day, that doesn't matter one bit.
Sure. I'm just thinking of other all-time players, Ben, that we may have missed, just in case anybody is coming after us or anything, I would imagine. But Giannis is another all-time great. Definitely not top 15 yet, but
I think he's top 20.
Yeah, he's creeping up there for sure. I would say Luka is not anywhere close yet, but maybe when his career is done, we're looking at him like that. Wemby, we can't ignore what Wemby's doing with the game right now. But that's really it in terms of what we've seen. Kawhi Leonard, great player all time, but probably not top 15 yet. Jason Tatum, another. Zion Williamson could have been, sadly, not living up to it.
Well, just injuries with him, Dan. Just want to add Zion, the hype with Zion in 2019 coming out of Duke. I mean, people were saying he would be, if for some of the young people who are, maybe teenagers right now. I know you got some young fans who watch you, Dan. This was going on 7 years ago now. When Zion was coming out of college, that number one prospect, people were comparing him to LeBron.
Sure.
In some ways to Oscar Robinson.
Remember he fell out of his own shoe? And
yeah, I was watching that game, Dan. That was against UNC, I believe. The issue for Zion, unfortunately, for me, in my view, has been his conditioning, his weight. I think that's contributed to a lot of the injuries he's gotten over the years. I mean, do you remember, Dan, Stephen A. Smith's, I didn't say this, Stephen A. Smith said this. Stephen A. Smith said, according to his sources, I don't know which sources these are, but whenever Zion is in New Orleans, at home, he goes into a restaurant and the chefs, they all want to meet him because apparently, quote unquote, he'll eat the table. And when you're a professional NBA player, I mean, sometimes I want to eat the table. We all got an appetite. But
sure.
With Zion, I think he has tremendous tools. But the issue for him has been, I think, the weight. Now this year he's gotten more conditioned. He's lost some weight from what I've seen earlier this year. Yeah, it's a good sound. But I mean, this year he's having a solid season. I mean, he's averaging 21 points per game, shooting 58% from the field. Scored 32 against Milwaukee back the 20th. So Zion is still it's not like he can't be a great productive player.
Sure.
But let's look at his best season, Dan. I'm just out of curiosity. 20 to 21 season. Was shortened due to the late start from the pandemic. So this was 2021 season that started in December 2020 after the NBA Finals that the Lakers won that year. This was Zion's best season statistically. 27 points per game, 69% free throw shooting. Sorry, I'm just looking at this.
Yeah.
7 rebounds per game, 3.7 assists per game, and shooting on 61% from the field. So 27 points per game, shooting on over 60% from the field, with 7 rebounds and almost 4 assists a game to go with that. I believe that was Zion's best, one of his best seasons, if not his best season. That's potential what he could have been, what he still could be, staying healthy. And being conditioned. That 20 to 21 season, see age 20 right there, Dan. That is what I believe was his best year. Zion, unfortunately, I think right now he is sort of known as a what if story. I mean, Zion is not in the same conversation as some of those other great prospects like Luka, who was I believe number 1 or number 2. I forget what he was. Luka, originally that pick was for Atlanta, and then they traded that with Dallas, which is obviously now is not even with Dallas anymore, but that's still one of the biggest what ifs of all time. But yeah, questions. It's an open question with Zion, but when he was with Duke that freshman year, the hype was on Wemby levels. When people were talking about Wemby, even more so because Wemby was international. He was from France. Zion in the 2018 to 2019 season with Duke, people thought this guy was going to take over like LeBron.
That team was loaded. I mean, they had Cam Reddish, they had RJ Barrett.
Yeah. And unfortunately, they underachieved that year as well. That's just another point, Dan, that in sports in general, because this is a general sports podcast, talks a little pop culture too. It shows you can have a great roster on paper. You can have a better roster than numerous teams on paper in your league and your conference. Doesn't mean anything once you get onto the court. Got to show you can play together. That's what it was with Duke.
Playing together, Ben. I think we play together well. I think the Mets hopefully going to play together well against the Yankees today in spring training. Hopefully the Knicks play together well as they get into their second half of the season. Now that All-Star break is behind us, fun All-Star weekend, fun All-Star break game as well. That was good. 3-point contest was kind of a joke. Same thing with the dunk contest. But
I think my quick opinion, just to say it, is they got to get rid of the All-Star weekend. They just
really?
Get rid of it. Yeah, I think they should just get rid of it. I think it's ridiculous.
Okay.
We can do a whole podcast on that. But
that's a little teaser. Maybe for the next episode, we'll have some top 10 pitchers. We'll talk about the All-Star breaks in sports. They need to be better. I think we both agree on that. And we'll see what happens. Make sure to like and subscribe, guys. This was All of the Bases. That's been Oppenheimer. I'm Dan Bartels. And this was another great episode. Again, make sure to like and subscribe. We will be back, pretty soon. Excited to keep this going and excited for another season of baseball coming up. Thank you all, and we'll talk soon.